And if you think you've seen some bad movies in your time, you ain't seen nothing yet.
You are traveling through another movie, a movie not only of horrible acting and nonsensical plots, but of bad directing. A journey into a shitty production whose plot coherence is that of imagination. Your next stop is The Shadow of Death.
Did you ever watch The Twilight Zone?
Following the original airing of It's a Good Life, The Twilight Zone would go on to run for another 2 seasons. It ended its run in 1964 with 156 episodes. The legacy it left is still felt today. Most people would consider it not only the best anthology show ever, if not the best show ever. Rod Serling moved on to other projects, but in 1974 he made it known that he was working on a full-length screen adaptation of the episode It's a Good Life. But this would never come to be. Rod Serling died suddenly on May 3rd, 1975 at the young age of 50. Whatever he had in mind for the big screen, it was now gone. But that all changed in 1983. Twilight Zone the movie is an anthology movie produced by Steven Spielberg and John Landis. It comprises 4 segments directed by different directors. Steven Spielberg and John Landis were also joined by Joe Dante and George Miller. But before we go any further, I think we have to discuss the Rod Serling in the room, and that would be the accident. This movie is really only remembered for one thing, and that is the tragic death of 3 people. On July 23, 1982, actor Vic Morrow and 2 children actors were killed when the helicopter they were in crashed. 3 people dying in a helicopter crash is bad enough, but the major problem was that the child actors weren't even supposed to be there. And most of the blame falls on John Landis for having them there. For one, the children were not allowed to be on set at night or near explosions, and they required some sort of adult handler. None were present. The child actors were being paid under the table, and most of the crew had no idea that they had even been hired for this scene. It was later revealed at the trial that John Landis had ordered the pilot to get lowered during the explosions. This is what caused the helicopter crash. Several crew members, including John Landis, were indicted on manslaughter charges, but all were found innocent. Critical reviews were also mixed, which even today is a problem for the movie. Some people hate it, some people love it. Me, I fall on the side of eh. The thing exists and it's nowhere near as good as the show, and the fact that 3 people died to make such an inferior product doesn't help. You can admire the desire of the filmmakers to make an homage to something that they truly loved, but it's just not that good. Following the accident, the movie opened to a lukewarm reception from audiences, somewhat because of the accident. The Twilight Zone movie is an uneven experience. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but most times it's just forgettable, and sometimes that's worse. The film starts with a prologue starring Albert Brooks and Dan Aykroyd. They're driving down a back road at night listening to Midnight Special by Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Let the Midnight Special shine a light on me.
That is until the tape breaks, and then they take turns singing and trying to guess TV themes.
Let the midnight...
I think your tape,
Oh, Jesus.
got eaten.
Okay, want to play TV theme songs?
Sure.
You know how to play that? How about this one? Know it?
From there, they move on to talking about the Twilight Zone, and then Dan Aykroyd mutates and kills Albert.
Did you ever watch The Twilight Zone?
Oh, God. Remember the Twilight Zone with Burgess Meredith? Remember? He loved to read, and there was a nuclear war, and he had no friends anyway, and he was down in the basement of the library. Yes! He was the last man. He broke his glasses.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
We then cut to the Twilight Zone theme and our new narrator for the Twilight Zone movie, Burgess Meredith.
A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Which makes a whole lot of sense because he's one of the first actors you would associate with the Twilight Zone. He did appear in 4 episodes for Rod Serling's sake.
It's a wonderful boy. And this poor little fella, his father has passed away, and his mother's married this miserable man called Murdstone. Isn't that a villainous name? Murdstone.
We then move on to segment 1, where we are introduced to Vic Morrow's character, who is, well, he's a fucking racist. He's your typical old, white, angry guy who blames the world instead of his own shortcomings, and if you think that I am showing any part of this long, terrible rant, then you are fucking delusional. Instead, here's a video of a funny cat. That's much better. Fuckface here keeps going and going and going until X from the X-Files tells him to stick it.
Excuse me, mister. Have you got a problem? Look, I really don't care what you gentlemen think, as long as we don't have to listen to it.
Creighton Duke has no time for that shit.
A little girl in a pink dress, sticking a hot dog through a donut.
In case you thought this segment couldn't get more uncomfortable, Vic's about to take a journey down memory lane. The first place he goes is Vichy, France, where he's pursued by the SS, and then he has a run-in with the KKK, and you will have to take my word for it that John Larroquette is in the scene because I'm not showing it. Instead, enjoy this random clip of John Larroquette.
Positive.
Vic is then taken to Vietnam, where he's almost killed by some crazy American GIs. The original ending had this character being redeemed, saving 2 children and getting away in a helicopter. But since they died during that scene, that ending is gone. Instead, he's taken back to France, where he's captured by the SS. He's shoved into a cattle car and taken to a concentration camp to be killed. This is the only original segment for the movie, and it shows. The end result just falls flat, mostly because the original ending is gone. We should want to see Vic redeemed, but instead he's killed. Look, he's a racist, but he should have a chance to be redeemed. Yes, he was saying stupid things, and they're hurtful things, but he wasn't out doing bad things to people as far as we know. We shouldn't feel excited for him being killed. We should want to see him get a chance to make his life better. And we don't get that. But honestly, after the deaths, this movie should have never even been made. This segment just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It's uncomfortable for what it tries to tackle and the way at which it does it, and for what actually happened in real life. The last thing I'm gonna say about this is fuck you, John Landis. We move on to segment 2, which was directed by the great Steven Spielberg, and it's a remake of the classic episode Kick the Can. In case you're not familiar with this episode, Kick the Can is an episode about old people becoming more in touch with their youth. One of the denizens of this old folks home decides that he wants to play Kick the Can and try to get in touch with his youth. There's one old codger, I hate youth, I love being old, the old bullshit, cliched shit. So one night they all play Kick the Can, and the next morning they're turned into kids. Except for the old codger who didn't play, and he's like, guys, it's me, and they're like, we don't know you, and they run away, leaving him to die an old, miserable, lonely death. That's the episode. So a logical question is, what did Steven Spielberg deliver for this remake? Well, if I can be totally honest, this might be the worst thing ever produced in conjunction with the Twilight Zone. Ever. Let that sink in real quick. Just remember what I said about the last segment. Yes, the segment which involved the Klan and 3 people dying on set is still better than this piece of shit. There is nothing to this segment. The original has a message that you can still be in touch with your youth. This piece of shit doesn't have anything. Yeah, it follows the basic beats, but it's not even the same fucking thing. Yeah, sure, they play Kick the Can at night, but they all turn back into old people the next morning. Except for one guy who decides that he wants to stay a kid and he just runs away. And then the old fucker's like, haha, I learned a lesson. There is no amount of Scatman Carruthers that's gonna save this piece of shit. Apparently, Spielberg shot this in 6 days. 6 days. He was apparently so disgusted with the deaths of Vic Morrow and the children, he wanted to have nothing to do with this film. He almost canceled the entire film, but he stayed the course. Ironically, he and John Landis stopped being friends after this, and I'm willing to bet that he has never really talked about this again. And there's a simple reason for this. This is the worst thing that Steven Spielberg has ever directed. Period. I think we can agree that moving on is the best course of action. We're gonna skip segment 3 as that's the whole point that we're here. We'll come back to it in the next episode. For the final segment, we get director George Miller of Mad Max fame directing this piece, which happens to be a remake of one of the most famous episodes in Twilight Zone history, maybe the most famous, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And finally, we get a goddamn good segment. And it's not just a good segment, it's a great segment. Again, in case you've never seen the episode, it stars William Shatner, overacting William Shatner, as a guy who's afraid of flying. And all throughout the episode, he looks out the window and he happens to see this monster, a gremlin, on the side of the plane, destroying the plane. but he's the only one that actually ever sees it. Eventually, he decides that he's gonna stop this thing, so he goes out onto the wing of the plane to try to stop this thing, but all he does is fuck the air pressure up, and everyone's like, what is this guy? Is he insane? So when they land, they put him in a straitjacket and take him away. But in reality, he was telling the truth. Shatner does an okay job, in my opinion. It's not my favorite episode. I mean, it's definitely one of the most important episodes, and it's not a bad episode. I'm just not a big fan of it. On the other hand, I love the 1983 version. The casting of John Lithgow is perfect. He's so much more believable. He's freaked out, he's sweaty, he's paranoid. It's fucking awesome. And the look of the gremlin is actually a lot better. The gremlin in the original kind of looks like a goofy alien. I don't fucking know. This one actually looks sort of menacing. I actually like that it gets cute and fucks with Lithgow a bit. It's like it knows that it's causing trouble and it knows that this guy's paranoid, and I love that. All in all, both are great examples of what the Twilight Zone can represent. It's also a great example on how to make a remake the right way. They are both similar, but the tone is very different, and that helps each one be good in its own way. This episode is essentially about John Lithgow being afraid of flying. He looks out the window and sees this gremlin pulling fucking wires out of the engine, and he starts to freak. Nobody believes him. He keeps looking out, the thing's there. When other people look, it's not there. They think he's insane. Finally, it escalates to the point where he grabs a gun and he fucking breaks the window and tries to shoot this fucking thing. But it flies away. Because he broke the window, the plane has to make an emergency landing because the pressure is unequal. And when they land, they take him away in a fucking straitjacket. And then the crew that come fix the plane comes and looks at it, and they realize Lithgow wasn't insane. There was really something chewing on the fucking cables to the engine. We then transition into the ending of the film. Lithgow's being driven away, and we see that the ambulance driver is actually Dan Aykroyd from the beginning of the movie.
So you had a big scare up there, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Want to see something really scary?
It's like, holy shit! Hasn't this poor guy been through enough? People didn't believe him about the fucking gremlin, now he's about to get killed by this fucking asshole. What a shitty day. All in all, that's the Twilight Zone movie, and, well, it sucks. The last segment is great. The first two can suck a wet donkey fart. John Landis can fuck off for the rest of his life. But wait, what about the remake to It's a Good Life? Well, my friends, that will have to wait till the next episode. But before we go...
Want to see something really scary?
Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special.
Yo, subscribe today.